If what Ferrari just did in preseason testing is real, then Formula 1 in 2026 is about to explode. Because Lewis Hamilton may have just unlocked something nobody saw coming. Not on the timing sheets, not in the interviews, not even in the headlines, but hidden inside over 4,000 kilometers of testing data, there is a pattern. A pattern that shows Ferrari completed the equivalent of 14 full race distances, 0 major mechanical failures, and a qualifying simulation that insiders say was still not at full power. And here's the part that should worry Red Bull. When Ferrari finally turned up the engine in Bahrain, they were sitting on more than 1.5 seconds of unused performance from Barcelona. That is not small. That is not incremental. That is championship shifting. But that's not even the real story. Because while everyone focused on lap times, Hamilton was working on something far more dangerous. Braking rotation using regenerative torque, manual energy override deployment, an active rear wing system inspected 3 times by the FIA and declared legal. And now preseason testing is officially over. The data is locked, the sandbags are gone, and Australia is next. If this hidden pace is real, the entire competitive order changes from race 1. Subscribe now, because what Ferrari is about to reveal on track could redefine this season before anyone has time to react. Now let's move beyond the headlines and into what really happened once the noise faded. Because after that explosive lap in Bahrain, Ferrari did something very deliberate. They stopped chasing glory runs. And that tells you everything. While other teams continued pushing visible performance simulations, Ferrari shifted focus to correlation runs, aero mapping, energy deployment cycles, brake migration adjustments, quiet work, serious work. And here's why that matters. When a team believes they are behind, they chase lap time. When a team believes they are competitive, they protect information. Ferrari looked like the second version. But here's where things start to get uncomfortable for their rivals. The SF-26 did not show porpoising. It did not show bouncing instability. It did not show overheating crises like some competitors. Instead, it showed control, mechanical traction in slow corners, confidence on initial throttle, stability under high-speed direction change. And Lewis noticed it immediately. He described the braking performance as the best he has felt in years. That is not casual praise. Under the new 50% electric deployment regulation, braking is no longer just about deceleration. It is about energy harvesting. And energy harvesting determines straight-line power. Hamilton spent entire sessions refining entry-phase rotation using regenerative torque. That is advanced. That is experience. And that is not something you master overnight. But here is the subtle shift nobody is talking about. Leclerc set the headline lap. Hamilton refined the weapon. One focused on peak performance, the other focused on repeatability. And in a championship fight, repeatability wins. Now, at another layer. Ferrari's power unit did not show clipping at the end of long straights during peak deployment simulations. Other teams did. Clipping means the battery runs out before the braking zone. Ferrari's system sustained full electrical thrust. That suggests superior thermal management or superior battery architecture. Either way, it is a strategic advantage. But remember what we said earlier. The weakness is not peak power. It is thermal sensitivity over long runs, rear tire temperature spikes, battery cell sealing limits in extreme heat. And this creates a fascinating contradiction. Ferrari may have built the most aggressive qualifying machine on the grid, but they are still refining its race composure. And here is where Hamilton's hidden pace becomes critical. Because if he consistently starts on the front row, he avoids dirty air. If he avoids dirty air, rear tire overheating reduces. If rear tire overheating reduces, the long-run weakness shrinks. Do you see the chain reaction? Qualifying pace is not just about Saturday glory. It is about protecting Sunday stability. And that is why the hidden pace matters more than the race simulations. Because the real weapon may not be endurance. It may be control of track position from the first corner of the season. But we are still missing one piece. A piece that connects Hamilton's adaptation, Ferrari's reliability, and Red Bull's long-run edge. And that piece becomes clear when you compare how each team approached the final afternoon of testing. That is where the truth starts to surface. The final afternoon in Bahrain did not look dramatic. No fireworks, no headline-grabbing laps, no last-minute glory run. But that silence was strategic, because while cameras followed long-run comparisons between Red Bull and McLaren, Ferrari split their program. Leclerc simulated qualifying again. Hamilton did not. He ran controlled stints, fuel-corrected runs, energy deployment cycles under variable temperatures, lift and coast simulations in peak heat. And here is where something revealing happened. Over a medium compound stint, Hamilton's first 8 laps were extremely consistent. Minimal degradation, strong traction, balanced rear stability. Then, as track temperature climbed, the rear began to move. Not dramatically, but progressively. Micro corrections on throttle exit, slight steering inputs mid-corner, the kind of movements only experienced drivers mask well. But the lap time delta told the story. The drop-off was not gradual like Red Bull's. It was sharp. Once the rear tires crossed a thermal threshold, performance fell faster. Now here's the important part. Hamilton did not complain emotionally. He described it clinically. Window gets narrow. That phrase is everything. Because when a driver says the window is narrow, it means the car is fast, but sensitive. Sensitive to wind. Sensitive to surface temperature. Sensitive to traffic. And sensitivity in Formula 1 can either become weakness or precision advantage. But this is where the hidden pace connects again. During cooler evening conditions, when track temperature dropped below 30 degrees Celsius, the SF-26 transformed. Rear stability improved. Energy deployment remained consistent. Corner exit rotation became predictable. In those conditions, Ferrari matched or slightly exceeded Red Bull's average long-run pace. Not by much, but enough to change the narrative, which raises a serious question. Is Ferrari's race deficit real, or is it temperature-specific? Because if the weakness only appears in extreme heat, then circuits like Australia and parts of Europe may suit them immediately. And if they start the season with momentum, pressure shifts. Now let's talk psychology. Hamilton looks different. Not nostalgic, not defensive, not experimental. Focused, he spent the winter shaping cockpit ergonomics around his preferences. Pedal spacing, steering wheel mapping, seating angle, small details. But small details create confidence, and confidence creates aggression. And aggression in qualifying creates track position, and track position protects tires. Do you see how every branch connects back to that same core idea? The hidden pace is not just speed, it is leverage. If Ferrari can start races ahead of Red Bull, they force Red Bull into strategic reaction. Undercuts, aggressive tire calls, risk, and under pressure, even dominant teams make mistakes. But here's the final piece of this block. Ferrari reportedly did not bring their full aerodynamic package to Bahrain. A revised floor, modified diffuser geometry, designed specifically to stabilize mid-speed balance and widen thermal operating range, held back from Melbourne, which means what we saw in testing may not have been the final version. And if the update widens the window even slightly, the sharp degradation curve softens. And if it softens, Hamilton's hidden one-lap advantage becomes exponentially more dangerous. Because then Ferrari is not just explosive, it is sustainable. And when explosiveness meets sustainability, championships begin to tilt. But there is still one confrontation we have not fully addressed. Red Bull were not showing everything either. And what they were hiding may determine whether the story becomes a revolution or just pre-season illusion. That is where we go next. Now, we have to talk about Red Bull. Because while Ferrari were showing flashes of controlled aggression, Red Bull were doing something very different. They looked calm, almost detached. No dramatic engine modes, no desperate setup swings, no visible instability. Just long runs, consistent laps, minimal steering correction. And that consistency is not accidental. Red Bull's philosophy appears inverted compared to Ferrari. Ferrari maximized peak output. Red Bull maximized thermal tolerance. Over extended simulations, Verstappen's degradation curve was linear, predictable, manageable, not spectacularly fast on lap 1 of stint, but strong on lap 15. And in Formula 1, Sunday decides narratives. But here's the subtle detail that complicates the picture. Red Bull did not attempt an all-out qualifying simulation in optimal track conditions during the final sessions. They never fully emptied the battery in a visible run, which raises the question, are they hiding one-lap pace or protecting reliability margins? Because if Ferrari's advantage over one lap is roughly 0.2, that is real. But if Red Bull still have deployment headroom, that gap may shrink. And this is where psychology returns. Ferrari looked like a team ready to attack. Red Bull looked like a team confident in endurance. One is explosive, one is controlled, and championships are rarely won by explosion alone. But here is something many analysts are overlooking. Ferrari's reliability, record, and testing changes risk calculations. 14 race distances completed, 0 major failures. That allows Ferrari to start the season aggressively. Red Bull, by contrast, appears slightly more conservative with energy deployment late in stints. Why? Possibly thermal management, possibly strategic masking, but possibly something else. Because if Red Bull are managing long-run pace carefully in heat, that suggests they are optimizing for worst-case conditions. Ferrari, meanwhile, are optimizing for peak performance and adjusting around heat sensitivity. Two completely different philosophies. Now imagine Melbourne. Mild temperatures, less extreme thermal stress, fresh asphalt grip evolution. Those conditions compress Ferrari's weakness and amplify their strength, which means qualifying in Australia could be the first real statement. If Hamilton extracts that hidden braking rotation technique under pressure, if manual override is unleashed fully, if the active rear wing system performs without thermal clipping, then pole position is not just possible, it becomes probable. And here is where the entire preseason narrative flips. Because if Ferrari lock the front row early in the season, Red Bull are forced into strategy under dirty air. And Red Bull in dirty air is a different equation. Now layer in team dynamics. Leclerc will not quietly surrender hierarchy. Hamilton will not play secondary driver. If Ferrari are genuinely competitive, internal competition intensifies. And internal competition, when managed well, pushes development speed. But when mismanaged, it fractures momentum. Fred Vasseur knows this. That is why he publicly downplays expectations. He calls testing times meaningless. He insists Red Bull are still favorites. But his body language in Bahrain told another story. Confidence, contained, measured. Now let's connect everything. Ferrari possess explosive one-lap pace, an aggressive but legal aerodynamic system, a power unit with strong cooling efficiency, and a driver who appears technically re-energized. Their weakness: thermal sensitivity, rear tire drop-off under extreme heat, a narrow operating window. Red Bull possess long-run stability, predictable degradation, strategic patience. They're unknown, true qualifying deployment ceiling. So the insane truth after preseason is not that Ferrari are dominant, is more dangerous than that. They might be fast enough to control the early phase of a championship. And if Hamilton builds momentum from race one, confidence compounds. Pressure builds in Milton Keynes. Development paths accelerate. Mistakes become more costly. And Formula One titles are often decided not by raw speed, but by who controls the narrative first. The sandbags are gone now. Testing is over. Data is real. And the first green light in Australia will reveal whether Hamilton's hidden pace was pre-season illusion, or the beginning of something Ferrari have been waiting for since 2007. And if it is real, this season will not follow the script anyone expected.